Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. Due to YouTube's changing quote-unquote community standards, I created a channel called Grumpy Old Fart over on Rumble, a free speech alternative to YouTube. You can see all of my stuff over there, including my political and social commentary, as well as my current events videos. The links to my YouTube and Rumble channels, as well as links to let you order my books, are in the description of this video. If you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. I welcome your comments, even if you disagree with me. Now, on with the video. Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. I'm doing an advanced Dungeons & Dragons advice video on campaign requirements. I started playing Dungeons & Dragons back in the 70s. I started running advanced Dungeons & Dragons in 1979. I still run it today with my family. When you're creating, as a dungeon master, when you're creating a campaign, there are certain things that you have to have in order to make the campaign function. And the basics of what I'm going to tell you are very, very basic. But the variety is infinite. You can do this however you want. I'm trying to give you the basics of what you have to have in order for the campaign to work. Otherwise, your player characters are just going to be running around doing whatever all the time. And that may work a few times here and there. From time to time, it's nice to let them cut loose. But for the most part, if you want them to stay on track, you have to have a campaign that keeps them on track. Or at least that interests them enough to want to stay on track. And I'm not trying to tell you how to run your game. You can ignore my advice. I'm just an old hack wargamer that has been doing this a long time. Seen and done some shit. Alright. First off, you need a story or a plot. A story and a plot. Every campaign has to have a storyline which incorporates a plot. The plot of the big bad guy has to threaten things of interest to the player characters. A grand heist of some foreign facility or institution, for example, will not garner the attention or ire of a local thief, a fighter, or a local cleric because they have no vested interest in that other facility. The plot would have to threaten a local beneficiary or the national well-being in general. Something like a plot to oust the just king or to rob a business that benefits the player characters in some way, that might work. If the king pardoned the thief because of some technicality which he didn't have to do and employs the fighter for personal security, which would be a great honor with tremendous pay, and goes to the cleric for advice, another great honor, and pays the wizard well for his services, it might urge a sense of loyalty and goodwill with those player characters. Anyone threatening to oust their king unjustly would be worth stopping. You have to give the player characters a vested interest in stopping the bad guy. The second thing you're going to need is a bad guy, a villain. I did a video on the types of villains. Go and check that one out. For purposes of this video, I'm talking about the big bad major villain. He has to have a master plan. Maybe he wants to rule a kingdom. Maybe he wants to become the most magically powerful being in the world. Maybe he wants to resurrect some long-dead ancient deity. Maybe he wants to become the wealthiest person in the land. Whatever. But this villain has to have a master plan. He also has to have the means and the motive and the opportunity to enact his master plan. He can have the greatest plan in the world, but if he doesn't have the means to carry it out, it's not going to work. He has to be motivated to do this. Otherwise, why have a master plan if you're not motivated? And he has to have the opportunity to do it. If he has no chance to get it done, what's the point of a plan? He has to have this. This one isn't as necessary as some of the others, but he has to have a henchman or an army. Even if he has a couple of helpers, that's their henchmen. Check out that video I did on villains. You'll see what I mean. Each and every player character has to have a vested interest in trying to stop the villain. I talked about this earlier with the story, the plot. A player who sees no reason for his character to participate will be bored and may grow resentful. Years ago, I started a small campaign with 5 players. In the second encounter, one of the player characters died. It was a case of serious stupidity on the player's part. There was no way to save their player character. Even if I could, I don't know that I would have. Because the player really, really acted stupidly. So the player made up a new character, Craig. Problem was that the new player character had a backstory that was antithetical to the storyline, and the new player character simply had no reason to participate. More than that, the new player character had more in common with the villain than the other player characters. It quickly escalated out of control as the new player character began arguing with the others, and ultimately combat broke out within the group. 3 players ended up having to create new player characters. It was a nightmare. Your player character backstories need to mesh with the story in such a way that the player characters will want to stop the villain for whatever reason. You can't control how your players write their backstory. That's why I don't put a lot of stock in a huge backstory. You know, where they were born, who their parents were, the basics. I like to run the characters ahead of time before I get them into the campaign, because that way we've created their backstory, or at least a good portion of it, enough to where they're vested in the campaign. You see what I'm saying? If they write out a backstory that has nothing to do with your campaign, or that's the other thing, you got to let them do their backstories before you figure out your campaign. It's crazy. If you have an existing campaign and a new player wants to join it, that's fine. He has to make a character that's willing to play. That's part of his responsibility. If he makes a character that is antithetical to the group and has more in common with the villain, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Part of the player's responsibility is to, when they're joining a campaign, is to make a character that's useful to the group. Part of being useful to the group is having a vested interest in trying to stop the bad guy, or help the group do whatever they're doing. You see what I'm saying? There have to be maps. The maps can be basic or as detailed as you want, as long as they serve the purpose for illustrating the setting and getting your player characters from point A to point B. Underground and or dungeon maps must be a lot more precise and detailed. Locations, destinations, and landmarks must be logical and must make sense in the story. A villain who's raising an army to conquer the kingdom must have a kingdom to conquer. There must be geographic and political borders, foreign lands to acquire troops from. If he's raising an army inside the kingdom to conquer the kingdom, that's going to be difficult. I did a video on, what was it? Coups and Rebellions, that's what it was. Go watch that one. You'll see what I'm saying. If you're raising an army inside the kingdom to oust the kingdom, to oust the king and take over the kingdom, that's exceedingly difficult. It's easier to go outside the boundaries of the kingdom, raise an army, and then come back. It's a lot easier. A villain searching for a long-lost artifact must have an area to search. That area will contain rivers, mountains, ruins, cities, islands, and whatnot. All this must be included on your map. Now, again, you can make it as detailed as you want, but the map has to serve the function. It has to give the players something to work with. Well, there's mountains to the north. Okay, how far? Oh, that didn't work. You got to give them some scope. You got to give them some scale. The dungeon master must outline the master plan in steps which will allow the player characters to possibly intervene. If the villain's plan is to revive a long-dead deity, he will need items and whatnot. One henchman will retrieve this thing. Another henchman is going to retrieve that thing. Another henchman is going to retrieve this amulet that the guy needs. Another henchman's going to retrieve the mystic MacGuffin, which combined with the items and bring the deity back. Each step, the player characters will have the opportunity, or should have the opportunity, to intervene and or investigate to stop the villain. Years ago, I was playing a game. It was Heroes Unlimited, and the guy had a villain that he created who kept robbing banks in the area, and for whatever reason, the player characters knew the banks were being robbed, but they had no idea how it was being done. We were stymied. We had no idea what bank was going to be hit next. We were trying to research and do some investigation. We even went so far as to contact the police. And this guy kept hitting banks, and we had no idea how to stop them. We figured maybe he was invisible or could teleport or whatever. Wasn't the case. He was a guy with a big robot. How you could rob a bank with a big robot and not be noticed, I don't understand. But you see what I'm saying? That was a poorly planned thing because the player characters had no idea how to stop him. And if the player characters, if our characters could see the robot or knew that there was a robot, but nobody reported the robot, maybe it cloaked or something, I don't know, but having the wall ripped out to get to the money, yeah, that's noticeable. It's hard to hide that. This game master, we would show up to the game and he was like, yeah, this bank just got robbed. Okay, what were we'll talk to the witnesses. Nobody saw anything. Okay, well, the banks were robbed in a random order, so it's not like he's going down the checklist. They're not alphabetical or anything like that. All right, well, what do the police have on it? Nothing. What about fingerprints? Nothing. Well, the player characters have to have some kind of idea how to stop, or they have to have the opportunity to try to stop the bad guy. If they try and fail, that's one thing, but they have to have the opportunity to try. You have to give them enough information, enough capability to intervene or investigate, or in order to try to stop the villain. At each step, the player characters have to have the opportunity to intervene and or investigate in order to stop this guy. Otherwise, his master plan is going to go off without a hitch. And that's supposed to be a storytelling thing where the player characters are the heroes. If they fail, then it falls to them to defeat the resurrected deity or whatever the thing is. So, essentially, every step of the way, there has to be minor failures on the part of the henchman, or maybe in the plan or whatever, so that the players, hey, wait, what's that guy doing? Let's go stop him. Or, hey, they've hit this and this. They got to go after this next. If they're going to do this thing, they're going to go after this next. So we'll go meet them there, and we'll wait and catch them by surprise. Something. It's got to be something like that. Each step of the way, the player characters have to have the opportunity to intervene and or investigate to stop the villain. If they fail, then it falls to them to defeat the big bad guy after his plan is enacted, which will be far more difficult. But that's part of the game. See how that works? And again, I'm not trying to tell people how to run their game. I'm just trying to help out. I've been doing this a long time. If you don't want to take my advice, amen. That's okay. But I do these videos because I know there's a lot of younger game masters out there who struggle with creating a game that people are willing to play. There's a lot of people out there putting videos like this out for a lot of the later editions, and a lot of those can be transposed to advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I don't claim to know much about 5th edition or 4th edition or any of the later ones, actually. 3.5 I think is the most I've done a lot with. But advanced Dungeons and Dragons I've got a lot of experience with. Over 40 years. So, if you get the opportunity, try out advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It captures a better flavor, in my opinion. And again, if you don't want to use my advice on these videos, that's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings none. I'm just trying to help out. You folks have a good day. God bless one and all. Clarissa Lowe, a historian from the future. Delmore Kane, a Civil War veteran turned outlaw. This oddball pairing faces a conspiracy of epic proportions spanning the centuries. If you like action and adventure westerns with a splash of science fiction and fantasy, check out my book series Drifters and their ongoing adventures.